All that said, I actually have to say that this might be the first church I've ever worked at where things mysteriously disappearing does not happen that often.
Agreed.
Like, it's just not one of those things that I've felt the need to worry that much about. Like, because I've worked at churches, like, you leave something sitting out. Bye.
I've had a guitar stolen out of a church. I've had 2 laptops stolen out of churches. I'm so paranoid. I lock every door and I put everything away because I'm so. And it hadn't happened in a long time, but yes, I have had that happen. Churches I was staying at for a mission trip, we'd like be setting up for worship, and then I come back and like stuff is gone. Come on, man.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
I had my I didn't have my wallet stolen, but I left it out, and then miraculously all the cash was missing.
At my last church, there was a van that the church used to own. This is a story that I was told when I got there, that the church used to own it, but they gave it to a different church that was also worshiping there. It was like, I think it was a Filipino church maybe, but they hadn't met in years. And I think the church had disbanded, but they didn't know like if they were just storing the van there or if they were going to come get it at some point, but the church didn't own it anymore, but it was sitting in our parking lot. And then one day it was gone. But one of our members or staff members or somebody said that the day before they saw somebody out there like looking at it, and somebody was like, well, maybe it was like the people from the church who owned it and they were coming to like make sure it like was still working or whatever. And they kind of looked at me and I was like, no, I'm that 1,000% that van got stolen.
Yeah, that thing is gone.
We tried to contact the church, but like they hadn't met since before COVID, and like this van, I'm surprised it started. But this is before we had cameras on that side of the building. But I'm like 95% sure somebody just stole that van and nobody pursued it. So
I was at a church, my first big boy job, and this church was just right on the verge of technology of any kind. And so they were still rocking projectors sitting on top of a rolling cart. And we had a guy that, like clockwork, he always like wheeled it. And we had like a lock, like a 4-year-old could pick this lock.
Yeah.
But it was still behind a door that was locked in the sanctuary. And one week he had to jet early for some reason. So he forgot to put it away, or he had to leave right and just it didn't get done. And within that Sunday afternoon, we came in Monday morning and it's gone. Just a projector that we were using. Like, all right, well, there you go. No projector. And for 2 weeks, like we didn't have anything on. We had no screen. So yeah. So we started Saints, Everyday Saints. Where'd that name come from?
Kevin and I. So Kevin's preaching one of the weeks.
I was really hoping you were just going to stop with Kevin, and then just that's it.
All I can think of whenever I say Kevin's name is the movie Home Alone.
Catherine O'Hara.
Yeah, when she realizes that they've left him.
Which Home Alone or Home Alone 2?
I think it's the first one.
Oh, she
where
says
they're
it
on the
both.
plane. Yeah. Kevin! But so there have been a couple, and I try not to scare him because when he's in his office, Kevin is facing the wind, like his computer faces the window. So he has his back to you when you like pass his office door. And one time I did walk by and I was like, Kevin! And he like, jumped and turned. I was like, oh, I'm sorry, man.
I'm going to get an audio clip of that and find a way to utilize it so that it blasts.
Just Catherine O'Hara screaming Kevin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should.
Which, by the way, in this season of like pre-Christmas, but we're leading up to Christmas and everything's about to be Christmas, can we just talk about, we just finished Halloween. Can we talk about how the fact that Catherine O'Hara is literally like the queen of holiday? Because like Nightmare Before Christmas, one of the most iconic Halloween movies. She's the voice of Sally.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that's Sally, one of the main characters.
Wow.
I always love to watch the movie Best in Show for Thanksgiving because what do you do on Thanksgiving? You watch
Yeah.
the dog show, and Best in Show is
Yeah.
that Christopher Guest movie. She's one of the main characters.
Yeah.
So there's your Thanksgiving. And then you have Catherine O'Hara is, Kevin's mom in the Home Alone movies, two of the most iconic Christmas. I'm just like, how does she have a stranglehold on the holiday season?
Everywhere. She's everywhere. No, I love it.
It's pretty incredible. So Kevin,
Sorry. Yes. Anyway, so
man, what a rabbit trail.
I was like, how do we get on this? So we were trying to come up. We knew we wanted to talk about the saints, and I had a couple of ideas. One was just the saints. One was we tried to find kitschy things like when the saints go marching in, or for all the saints is the I think that was the placeholder for a while, for all the saints. And then once we kind of fleshed out, because we didn't know what we wanted to talk about. We just knew we wanted to do a series on the saints. In our brainstorming kind of worship planning session, everybody gravitated around this idea of what if we talked about the saints? We've never really done that. And I've never preached about it. And so it was just like saints placeholder. But we didn't really know what we were going to do with that. And so when Kevin, said he wanted to preach one of the weeks, I was really thrilled. And so we kind of brainstormed, what is this series about? Like, are we just going to pick a different saint each week? What do we want to do with it? And so when we kind of landed on, we want to reframe the concept of what a saint is and kind of challenge the assumption that a lot of us have that a saint is like a perfect person, that they do everything perfectly. They are morally pure. They're just sort of like this unattainable idea of perfection. And kind of challenge that. We then kind of leaned more into that idea of, well, we can be saints, and people that you might not realize are saints. And a lot of the people in scripture that became saints were not the most qualified. They weren't the most educated. They were everyday people. And so we kind of started brainstorming this, and I said, okay, we don't have a good name for the series. What do you think we should call it? Was the first thing he said. He said, Everyday Saints. And I was like, wow, okay. Write it down. So
there you go, Kevin. Nice work. So one of the first things I thought about, and you somewhat alluded to this, but is it actually impossible for a saint to know that they're a saint?
So this is something that we're going to get a lot into in these next 3 weeks. All Saints Sunday was such its own thing. The core of this sermon series is going to go not necessarily in a different direction, but we didn't really get into a lot of what the series is going to be about on All Saints Sunday. And part of it comes down to what does it mean to be a saint? And do you know you're a saint? And how do we compare that with so in the Catholic Church, they have formal saints that they've canonized. There's a process you go through to be canonized as a saint. It's always long after you've died usually. But what does that mean? The way we're going to take this is a lot less about that and more about what do we mean when we say that someone is a saint, and how do we interpret that? And I don't know that you would know. I think for most people, if they're going to be that connected to God and they're going to be following Christ, they're going to have humility as a part of their life. And I talked about this a little bit on Sunday, but you're going to be a humble person, so you're not going to think that you're a saint. This is an interesting question that gets brought up a lot in ordination. There's interviews you have to go through, and there's historic questions you have to answer. And one of the questions that they ask has to do with what we call Christian perfection, which has to do with the way we understand grace. Grace, very briefly, you have prevenient grace, which is God loves you before you even know it. Justifying grace is that we've made a decision to choose to follow Christ. We repent of sin. We are washed. We receive salvation. It's kind of that idea of forgiveness and love. And then we have sanctifying grace, which is the grace that goes on our whole journey, where we're going on this journey to become a better person, a better disciple in Christ. We're learning how to love better. We're learning how to serve better. It's a lifelong journey. And the language that we use for that is Christian perfection. We are on a journey toward Christian perfection. And one of the questions at ordination, when you get ordained, the bishop in front of the whole clergy session makes all of the candidates stand up there and they ask them, do you expect to be made perfect in this life? And you have to say yes. The answer is to that question. There is an answer to the question. And the answer is yes. And that throws a lot of people off because the idea is, what do you mean when you say perfect? And when you talk about Christian perfection, it's not perfect in the sense of you are sinless, like Christ was perfect. It's not perfect in the sense that you never make a mistake. The language is that you are perfected in love. You have learned how to love perfectly. You've learned how to love like Christ loves. And so we do believe that you are able to learn how to love. Doesn't mean that you become Christ, but that you can learn to love like God. You can learn to love like Christ. You can learn to be selfless. You can learn to do that. And it is our expectation, if we follow along in this journey, that we will be able to reach that. And it's not like all of a sudden you start glowing and you've attained perfection. Like, you never really know that you've been that. But the point behind the question is to say this is not an unattainable goal. We do believe that we can learn how to love like Christ. We're not always going to get it right, and it's a journey, and there's forgiveness. But a lot of time, Christianity sets it up as this unattainable, like the way that like Calvin would talk about it. And Calvinists are one of the like tenets of their faith. Tulip is the acrostic they use, but it's total depravity is the first. That's what the T in tulip stands for. And that idea is that like humans are worthless, like we are totally depraved. Humans
Sounds
are
like
dirt,
John Calvin,
and they are scum, and you can't do anything. It is only God, and God chooses the elect, and only the elect. It's irresistible grace. That's the I in tulip. Like you can't resist it if you are the elect, and it's only God doing good through you, and humans are trash. That's not what we believe. We have a much higher view of the anthropology of humanity. We think that humans are not trash. It's that we are prone to selfishness. We are prone to greed. We are prone to sin, and we do need to be saved from it. And that's sort of the sin that we are trying to kind of seek redemption from. Yeah. And so I think that's where, I know this is a super long answer to it, but like that's where we get around to this idea that you are not trash who's trying to, and you're not trying to achieve some unattainable idea. It's the sense that Christ came to earth to show us what love looks like, and we can learn how to love like Christ loved. And we expect to be able to learn how to do that. And so that's where that language is kind of wrapped up in it. And so I think in that sense, can you know you're a saint? I think you can work toward it, and you can take stock and say like, yeah, like we do our prayers, presence, gift, service, and witness, the vows we take in membership. Like, am I doing those things?
Sure.
Am I a kind person? Am I putting others first? Am I walking the talk? So I think you can take stock of it and know, like, am I on a good journey? Am I trying to live the life that I would consider it is to be a saint, but I think trying to identify yourself as a saint, I don't think that's ours to say.
No. That seemingly feels like it would be an immediate disqualifier.
Yeah,
if you're
right.
like,
Yeah,
pretty sure I belong on this saint list you have here.
I am a saint. You should look to me.
So I was while you were kind of talking about some of this, and a saint doesn't really see themselves as a saint kind of thing. I remember a conversation I had because I was looking up at the graphic and I saw the image of Saint Mother Teresa, or Saint Teresa, whatever. And I remember having a conversation about her in a Bible study I had when I was in college. And we were discussing the idea of selflessness, and we got into it. It was very like heady. We're all high on our own supply of, we're all new to like information and kind of college kid discussion, but even the adults in the room were kind of not sure what to do with this. And so we ended up calling it, I have no idea if this exists anywhere outside of this conversation that I had in a Bible study in college, but we called it the selflessness paradox. Because as human beings, when we do something selfless for somebody else, there is a chemical reaction in us that makes us feel good. And so by that standard of selflessness, we know by doing this thing, at least after the first couple of times. I'm going to feel good after this. So is it truly selfless to do certain things? And so that was where we debated for like an hour on whether or not there is such a thing as genuine selflessness, because you know you're going to feel good by doing something selfless.
Yeah, there's a book called Does Altruism Exist? That tries to answer this very question. There's an episode of Friends where Joey tells Phoebe that like you can't do a truly selfless act because there's always like something in it for you, and so she like goes out of her way the whole episode to try to do something selfless, and like it's a very funny journey they go on. But yeah, I mean that's a whole point, and that's what's always struck me as difficult when I run into people who have a very transactional view of their faith. And it's usually more kind of fundamentalist traditions where they're very concerned about judgment. But this idea that like you need to be kind to other people or you're going to go to hell. And I'm like, well, that's really self-serving. Like if you're doing these quote unquote selfless things so that you can get a reward, even if it's like an eternal reward, that's not really selfless. Like you're doing it for yourself. And so I think that that's a very good question. And I think too, usually when people say that kind of stuff, they think about like, I'm going to give money to charity, or I'm going to do something that gives me kind of a warm and fuzzy. And I think a different way to think about that is like, what if you let somebody else have credit for something? What, like something where you're not going to feel warm and fuzzy about it, but you're like, the first will be last. Like, how do you decenter yourself and empower others where it's not really like you're doing a good cause? Forgiving someone. Well, we talked about that on our staff meeting today. Kevin's devotional was about how we have a struggle to forgive others because that vulnerability and that, forgiveness can be seen as weakness. And so some people don't want to forgive. They don't want to be seen as weak or whatever. And we hold grudges. And I think that a lot of this kind of ties together in the sense of like, how do you truly be selfless? How do you truly be filled with grace and love? Well, are you willing to forgive someone when they because that's not going to really give you warm and fuzzies and make you feel better as much as like, in the, we always imagine like Christmas time and it's cold and there's a homeless person on the side of the street and we're going to bring them soup and we're going to do something kind for them. And that's going to make us feel good because we're giving back to the community. Well, if you're forgiving somebody who wronged you, that's not going to make you feel good. Like you might be proud of yourself a little bit, but you're probably still going to be mad at them. And so I think to me, that's where you really see, it reminds me of that Ted Lasso episode where like at the end of this is like spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, but it's the first season, where Rebecca finally tells Ted that like she's used him and she lied to him and he says that he forgives her.
It's like, we're cool.
Yeah. And she's like, why? Like, why would you forgive me? And it's because he sees like she's going through a divorce and that's why she did it. He's going through a divorce. That was the first thing he said.
Divorce is hard.
Yeah. And he's like, I get it. It makes us do crazy things. And he's like, look at me like I'm coaching soccer in England. Like that's crazy. And so he sees her as a person. He doesn't just see what she did. And I think to me, that's a great example. I know we've talked about this, like Ted Lasso was so perfect in so many ways, but
it really is.
That to me, that's a great example of selflessness, is forgiving someone when there's not something in it for you, when you're not going to feel warm and fuzzy out of it.
You mentioned something that made me think of this, and I need to text my buddy Jonathan Perry. He's
I know Jonathan.
So I was at his first appointment. We worked together before he officially transitioned over to be Methodist. Yeah. And then while he was at that church, he started
having breakfast with him on Friday.
Stop it. What are the odds of that? Okay. So he told this story. We started this church service called Mosaic at First Methodist Louisville long time ago.
That's my parents' church.
Really? Oh my gosh.
The web we weave, John,
is ridiculous. This is insane. Oh my gosh. I want to just cancel this whole podcast and just talk about this. Anyway, he told this story, and I need to figure out, I can give you the gist of it. It was basically this mountain climber, and I believe he the story goes that he was climbing this mountain that had never been conquered. Nobody's ever summited it, and he did it. He was the first one to summit it, and it was just him and his Sherpa. And so when he got up there, what he's supposed to do, like, let's capture this moment. The Sherpa didn't understand how to work the camera, so he just said, "Okay, you stand there," and he took a picture of the Sherpa. When you look up who was the first person to ever summit whatever mountain it was, there's only one picture of the first summit, and it's of his Sherpa.
I love that.
And in that moment, he did the way that Jonathan tells the story, if I recall, he didn't really hesitate. He was just like, well, I'll just take a picture of you. Like it didn't really occur to him that
because they did it together.
But because of that selfless moment, and maybe just how his brain is wired, but there's this one picture of a nameless Sherpa. I don't even know if we know the guy's name.
Right.
But and that's the picture of the first summit of whatever mountain it is. I think it's like a big deal mountain too. I can't remember.
Right.
Ask Jonathan when you have breakfast.
Well, now I want to look it up.
But it's just this incredibly captivating story. Like, I remember Jonathan got emotional when he put the picture up on the screen, and I just remember being so captivated by this story, and it was just this. It's this seemingly like non-important thing, but what a big deal that you have accomplished something that most likely nobody in the history of planet Earth has ever done, gone to the top of this mountain.
Right.
And you are about to capture this moment in the only way you can with a picture. You take a picture of the other guy.
Well, and to me, this it's generative, like that humility and kindness begets humility and kindness. And so when I was doing one of my internships in seminary, I had one of the pastors who asked me if I would preach one of the Christmas Eve services. And I said, "What?" It's like, "This is Christmas Eve, dog." Like, what? No, like they don't want to hear from me, man. They want to hear from you.
I'm gonna get you a shirt for Christmas Eve that says, "This is Christmas Eve, dog."
Yeah. And he was like, no, and it wasn't like the main one. There were multiple services, but he was like, "You're gonna have to preach big services, and high holy days like are weird. They're a different kind of sermon. It's a different kind of pressure, and I want you to experience that before you have to do it on a bigger stage when you're in charge of the church. And so like, I want you to try." And when I was like in my first associate pastor job, the senior pastor, I forget which service it was, but he asked me to preach like maybe one of the Easter services or like one of the bigger services. And it was a big deal for me that I got to do that. 'Cause like, you don't get to like, the backup doesn't get to play in the Super Bowl. Like you don't get to do that. And it was such a big deal. And so just last year at my last church, we had a Perkins intern. And throughout his internship, like I wanted him to kind of see all the different things, experience the different things. And so without thinking, I said, "I want you to preach one of the high holy days so you can kind of know what that's like." Because that's what people had done for me. I didn't even think about it. And I said, "So why don't you preach, which one did he do?" Well, he did Palm Sunday, and we only had one service. I'm like, he was the act for Palm Sunday. It's a huge service. We did the huge like processional and all this stuff. And he designed our Maundy Thursday service. And somebody came up to me later in the week, and they were like not in like a bad way, like, "I can't believe you did that," but like, "I can't believe that you had like the intern like preach on such a huge day. Like that's so incredible for your humility." Like they were like congratulating me and like saying how humble I was. And I was like, "What?" Like, I was like, it was one less sermon I got to write. Like it was a busy week. Like it was nice to have some help. I got to write like 6 sermons in this week. So like, it was nice to have some help, but also I was like, "What do you mean? This is just what you do." And then I realized like, but this probably isn't like, I only think this is what you do because someone did it for me. And that normalized it for me because it is a humble thing to step out of the way on a big day because you want the spotlight on a big day. And I didn't really I did at the time, but at the time when I was an intern, when I was an associate pastor, I wasn't thinking really about how selfless that was of my boss. I was just thinking of how cool of an opportunity this was because I was thinking about myself.
Sure.
And I kind of took for granted their generosity, but it shaped me. And their humility embedded in me. And so I did it without thinking. And I'm hoping that he goes on, and when he's got an intern at his own church, he does that too. And so I think that like it passes it on. And I think the more that we can be selfless, the more that it inspires others to do that, to the point where hopefully you start doing it without even thinking. And you run across some of the coolest people I've ever met are the people who they are really good at making money. They didn't inherit it. They just have made a ton of money in whatever that they do for a living, but you would never know it. So one of our friends in a seminary, we knew her. She didn't go to seminary. She was connected through a friend group, but her father was like the president of the stock exchange in Chicago. Like he was like super powerful, wealthy in Chicago. But he drove like, he drove like a 20-year-old Suburban. He wore just like, Old Navy jeans and a polo shirt. Like you would never know that this dude was like one of the, not one of the wealthiest people, but like super powerful finance dude. Rode the train every day downtown to go to his job, and just like you would never know it. And I've met people like that who are just like, they have unbelievable wealth or power or fame, or they've done incredible things, but they don't talk about it. They don't brag about it. And then when you find it out about them, you're like, oh my God, like this is incredible. Because usually people can't wait to tell you they can't wait to show you all their money and all their power and all their They can't wait to tell you the story of the time they met whoever. And when you meet someone who's truly humble, they're not doing it for an act. They just, they don't talk about themselves. It's so powerful. And it just really, it kind of humbles you in that moment where you're like, oh man, I can't shut up about my accomplishments. And this guy over here is like done things I could never imagine. And he just like walks through the world empowering other people. What? I mean, it's just like we'd go to dinner with somebody. I've been with a few people who have a lot of money who like give huge tips as a way to like, they'll get to know, waiters, and they'll find out they're going through college and they're struggling to pay their way. And so they'll give them like a $5,000 tip or whatever. I've learned too that they always have to ask, do you pull your tips? Because if they're trying to help like change someone's life, then they have to share that with like 30 waiters. They're like, well, I didn't really do much for you, but, I have seen that in a few different people, and it's interesting to see the ones that want the praise for it, where they fill it out and they sit there and they wait because they want to see the face, they want to be thanked,
or the ones that
they want to talk to the manager,
peace out.
Or they leave. And they leave a note where they say, yes, this is real. I whatever. They want to make sure that they know this wasn't a mistake. There's a comma where it's supposed to be, but the ones who drop it and leave, those are the people I want to be like.
So there are two people that I think of with that have famously done that several times. One is Post Malone. He has done that a number of times, and he always he'll just everybody wants to talk to Post Malone. You're Post Malone. Let's have a conversation, and he'll hear a story or whatever. And there have been a number of times where he left some just monstrous tip and then peaced out. And I just love that. He's one of those people that I just, every story you hear about him, you like him even more. The other one that I've heard, because I've known two people who have waited on him, is Mark Cuban. And apparently his philosophy is always he tips 100%. Whatever the bill is, that's the tip. Yeah. So if he goes to IHOP, and his bill is $86, he tips $86. If he goes to, the mansion off Turtle Creek and his bill is, $860, he tips $860. So I've heard two people tell me that Mark Cuban tips 100%. Interesting. And that's just an easy way, I think, for him, because he can afford it. He doesn't really care. But yeah, and like in both cases, of my friends that waited on him, they were like, yeah, he left the tip, and then he left, and one of them, I think he saw them on the way out, and he said thank you, and then walked out. So he wasn't waiting around to see that. So
it's interesting. I heard a different conversation. It was actors, I think, who they were talking about like tipping culture, and like the perception when you're a celebrity, I think it was maybe Jerry Seinfeld and some other people were talking about, like, when everyone knows who you are, like they expect you to give a bunch of money. Mm-hmm. And so one of them said that their practice was they just have a bunch of $100 bills in their wallet, because everywhere they go now, if they're going to have a super expensive dinner, that's different. But like everywhere they go, I just leave $100. I get a cup of coffee, I throw in $100. I get a dinner and it's $40. I throw it because that feels like a lot of money. Like seeing $100 bill.
There's a bill.
It's the optics of it. And in that moment, they were like, but they were having a really interesting kind of background conversation around like optics, celebrity culture. What it is this? Am I doing this because I want to do something kind? Am I doing it because I don't want bad press? I don't want people to be like, oh, Kevin Hart came in and he only left $2 as a tip. You know, like how do you kind of navigate all that situation? And so I think it's interesting when you think about like expectations and how that all factors into humility and generosity. And I think it's funny because there was a preacher I used to work with who used to always, this comes from scripture, but she used to always say, people always think about how generous they're going to be when they have more money, or how much service they're going to offer when they have more time. When I retire, when my kids move out to college, when I get this promotion. And she said, if you're not doing it now, you're not going to do it then.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that's in scripture. If you I forget how it's worded, but like if you're faithful with a little, God will bless you with a lot. You'll be faithful with a lot. But I think that is, I hear that all the time. And I even think about it myself, usually with regards to time, where I'm like, oh, I'm so busy with the kids are so little. Once they get a little older, I'm going to have more time. Yeah, right. Like it's not true. And so I do think that all of that comes back to, we love to think about how we're gonna be better someday, or I'm gonna be, or we, how do we perceive ourselves? So I'm intrigued. I keep, you're messing with this question about like, do you know you're a saint? And I don't know, because how often are we really honest with ourselves, and how much, like, I feel like either people look at themselves with very rose-colored glasses, or they're constantly tearing themselves down. Yeah, and I think it's hard to have an honest view of how am I doing?
Do you think there's somebody right now who is alive that you would say, oh, this person will absolutely be, or they should be canonized as a saint? Or somebody who's passed away very recently? I'll give you that.
I don't know.
Because I'm sure a lot of people would say, "Oh, Billy Graham." Billy Graham.
Well, so we're going to get into this in the series. Is like, is it about what you accomplish, or is it about your character and who you are? And you would want it to be both. But like when you think about the saints that you've got in that video before, a lot of what's listed next to their name are their accomplishments. Yeah. And so when I think about like who should be sainted for their accomplishments, like I don't know that there's anybody who's done more like not fame wise, but like that people know about, made a larger impact in Methodism than Adam Hamilton. He has grown the largest church. He produces so much content. He's got a leadership whole training program that he created. Like they now run that seminary that they merged with. Like
whenever they have,
he's done so much.
The conference,
the Leadership Institute or whatever.
He makes himself available to try and help solve problems.
Yeah,
when he doesn't have to do any of that.
Right. So I think about him in art, like locally. I know we both know Clayton Oliphant, who's the pastor of First Richardson. I don't know someone personally who has grown more churches than that man. Mm-hmm. And I could name a lot of people who have done. It's not just about growing churches, but like I can name a lot of people who have done a lot, come up with a pioneering idea that's changed the way that we see things.
The guy that was out of the church in California who started Celebrate Recovery, Rick Warren's church.
There's a lot of those like people who have innovated that I think could be wonderfully celebrated. But we've also seen this too. Like, can you separate the art from the artist? And there's a lot of conversations around like, we used to always call Michael Jackson the king of pop. And but then there's a lot of stories that came out about Michael Jackson and can you separate? There's a lot of actors who have won Academy Awards, but it's but how do you feel about them after you find out about their character? And so it's tough. And there's also people who have incredible character. And I don't want to say they haven't done anything, but they haven't done anything of note that is going to be written about and recognized, but their character might be. And if they have incredible character, you're probably not going to know because they're very humble and they're not going to flash their accomplishments. But so I think that's the hard part about it is when you become a famous person, like Mother Teresa became super famous. Yeah. How well, that's a persona you're getting to know. That's a crafted image.
Did she even notice that there were constantly cameras following her around? Did she care? Was that on the back of her mind that this is because that's a two-sided coin? Is that it's good that people see. I have so often been the person who's showing up to a Habitat for Humanity work site or to somebody feeding the poor, and I'm sitting there with my big stupid camera,
right?
But I have come to the conclusion that if it is authentic, what we're doing here, we're here to help people. I think that as we talked about earlier with our staff, that one of our primary jobs is to inspire people. And if nobody ever sees what you do, that's kind of hard.
Well, and it's observation bias. If you're being watched, you're going to behave differently.
Sure.
And so and people will say well, then it's just all an act, but it's tough. And I feel this every day. I act differently when I'm at church, when I'm with church members, because I'm their pastor. I'm the pastor at the church. I have to it is tricky because sometimes it does feel like it's an act. Sometimes it does feel like you're not being genuine because you want to be yourself. But also, if I disagree with you, I'm not going to fight with you in the church. I'm not gonna be rude. I'm gonna really be and the thing that I have to remind myself of is I should be like that all the time.
Oh, sure.
But at some point too, it's but you also have to be a human being.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you're in a bad mood. Sometimes you're tired. Sometimes you you can't always just turn the other cheek, but you're supposed to. So that's the thing that's I think is really hard for me is you behave differently when you know people are watching you. And the question then becomes, are you lying in that moment because you're not authentic to who you are? Or is this really who you should be? And it's when you're alone that you're lying because you're behaving more selfishly and you're not living up to the standards you would have for yourself, but there's no one around to see you. And so that's where we talk about character is about how you act when no one's watching.
Well, that just makes me think of that famous, it's attributed to some Native American wisdom or whatever. It's am I good or evil? It's well, we all have good and evil. You have a good wolf and an evil wolf that lives within inside you. But which am I? Whichever one you feed.
Well, yeah. Oh, I love that. I haven't heard it phrased that way. I love that because we talk about this all the time where there's, one of the questions that always gets asked is why do bad things happen to good people? It's a theodicy question. Why does evil exist in the world? And so I reject the premise of that question because I don't believe there are good people. I don't believe there are good people and bad people.
We've seen good people do horrible things.
The time.
We've seen bad people redeem themselves through great acts.
Well, people say it all the time, the bad guys and the good guys. And in the movie, you wear the white hat or the black hat. There's good guys and bad guys. But in real life, a human is not all one thing. A person, I don't believe a person can be evil. I think that a person can do incredibly evil things, but
nobody thinks they're the bad guy.
Nobody thinks they're the bad guy, and nobody's all good. Nobody's all bad. You're not one thing. And we wake up and we make choices. And I think that's what's really complicated in the nuance of have you ever seen The Good Place? So I want to
love, because that was, I think that was
Ted
the last
Danson
thing that,
and Kristen
was that Mike Schur that did that? I know Kristen Bell is the main person, and that's anyway.
So the whole thing about it is what they kind of work down into part of the way through the show is that essentially life has become so complicated, it's hard to know if you're doing something right or wrong. So it's like, you innocently go and purchase coffee at the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
What you don't realize is the way that it was harvested.
You are
was
employing
taking
slave
advantage
labor.
of slave labor, or the corporation for the grocery store that you purchased it is embezzling money. And like, so you're unwittingly contributing to all these things, but you didn't know it. And it gets into like how
to know.
complicated life is, and your choices are not black and white. And like, does it matter if that's not what you intended? Then people will say this so legally, ignorance of the law is not a viable defense. No. So if you didn't know that you were breaking a law because you didn't know that law existed, it doesn't mean you're allowed to. And so I wonder about that. And I think this plays into a lot of those factors where, like, if you're trying to be a good person, that's hard to do because life is so complicated. And it feels relative in a way where it feels impossible to kind of attain it. And so some people are like, I'm just not even going to try. But it usually makes the rest of us very angry because we're like, but I'm trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And how dare you say that I'm not doing this right.
So speaking of trying to do the right thing and not the wrong thing, I want to close with this. What did you spend your sin money on?
I was thinking about that because as I told the story, so
he told the story, and my immediate thought is, what did
you spend the money on? So,
by the way, we're referring to something he said in a story in the sermon. So if you don't know, that means you haven't watched the sermon, and you should.
My uncle gave me a check in seminary for $1,000 and said, this is sin money. Spend it on something, silly. Don't spend it on books or tuition or whatever. I don't remember. I didn't go buy one big thing. I do know that because I would have remembered that. But I don't know. I think maybe we went on a trip or I say we. I don't know if I don't know what I did with it now that you say that. 'Cause I thought about this when I was telling that story. I remember him saying in the letter, like, don't buy books with this, or don't, like, this is sin money. But then in my head, I thought, what did I spend that money on? I don't know what I spent the money on. I probably just kept it. I don't know, saved it for doing, I don't know, going on vacation, or I didn't have any money. I probably went to a restaurant. I was like, I'm going to go to an actual restaurant with a menu. Because in grad school, man, like, we had no money. It was, except when the student aid, when the financial aid check came in, then we all had money.
We went. I remember my freshman year, and I saw that for the first time. I was like,
in debt.
Everybody has that freshman epiphany where they all of a sudden have this big fat check with their name on it. I lost my mind. I don't remember what I spent that money on that freshman year, but I remember it was stupid.
Yep. Yeah, and I was definitely the generation where, like, we did not understand what student debt was going to be as we walk through life. But
yep. All right. Well, good start to what looks like it's going to be a good series. So thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
It's going to be a fun time. Catch you in the next one. Peace.